Sports Talk with Playeragent3. My next guest is a veteran in the game, a veteran coach who has coached basketball on all levels. He is a father, life coach, and more importantly, a friend of the JCK Sports Group family. Coach Bob Mackinnon. How's it going, Coach?
Oh my God. Thanks for having me. Great to be here today with you. A couple days here before Thanksgiving. I am very thankful to be here with you.
Hey, I'm glad to finally have you on the show. You know, I told Jamie, I said I got to get Coach on the show, man. He's been a friend of the of the agency, so I got to be able to talk to him on the show. So I definitely appreciate it. So, Coach, talk about growing up in Buffalo, New York, and how basketball became a part of your DNA.
Well, I was born into a basketball family. My dad, played basketball growing up and played all the way through. He played 2 years in the NBA with the Syracuse Nationals. And then when he was done playing, he also actually played minor league baseball and played all the way up with the Dodgers through their AAA organization.
Okay.
So, and he grew up in Buffalo and went to Canisius College and played there. And then after he was done with his playing career in baseball and basketball, he came back and he coached high school basketball for 2 years. Actually, he was undefeated both years. The last teams, it was McKinley High School in Buffalo, New York. Mm-hmm. And the last teams that went back-to-back undefeated were his teams all the way back in the 50s.
Wow.
So he did that. Then he went to Canisius College. He was an assistant there for 2.5 years and then took over the head job and was the head coach at Canisius College for 16-plus years. And from there, made the move to the NBA. He was with the Buffalo Braves. Then he went to the ABA with the St. Louis Spirits, and I was actually a freshman in high school at that time.
Okay.
And then back to Buffalo as the general manager of the Braves. And then there was a deal where the owner of the Braves swapped franchises with the owner of the Celtics. And the guy who got the Braves in the swap moved the Braves to San Diego, and they became the Clippers.
Okay.
And then my dad went in the swap, though, to Boston. So he became an assistant coach with the Celtics, and he was just there for a year. And then he went to the New Jersey Nets, and he ended up the last 14 and a half years of his career as everything from an assistant coach to a head coach on 3 different occasions on an interim basis to GM with the Nets, again, the last 14 years. So I kind of just grew up with it. I had myself and I had 4 sisters. Mm-hmm. So, back in the 60s, the girls didn't travel with the team and all that stuff. It was a men's team with Canisius. So I got to go with my dad on all the road trips. Shoot, when my dad went out recruiting, I got to go with him on recruiting trips when I was like 5 and 6 years old.
Wow. So you really didn't have a choice.
No, I was just always around it,
Yeah.
And I can remember the old Memorial Auditorium that since has been, blown up and torn down in Buffalo. But shoot, my dad's teams would be practicing there. I'd be running all over the place. I knew every nook and cranny. I knew the concession stands.
Yeah.
I was in everything there. So it was just a great time to grow up and be around it, and just had just a wonderful experience growing up around the game.
1982, King's College. That was your coaching career was essentially born. Talk about that. How did that opportunity come for you?
Well, I played at King's College my first 3 years. And going into my senior year, our head coach, Ed Donahue, great man, love him, he came to me and said, look, I said, I'm bringing in a freshman point guard. Our starting point guard was a junior at the time. He said, you're going to be third on the depth chart. He said, I know you're not real happy with it. He said, you can fight all year and get it. He said, but what I'd rather have you do is, I know you want to get into coaching. He said, I'd like you to be one of my assistants. And, we were Division III, and he didn't really have another assistant. So I became his assistant. It was great because he'd go on the road recruiting and stuff and leave me in charge, and I'd run practices. And we actually, my junior year, I believe we won 14 games. And my senior year, we won 22 games. Okay. So it was a great experience for me to get into coaching at that point as just a college senior. And then from there, I was able to get a job at Mercyhurst College in Erie, Pennsylvania, which was Division II. And I was an assistant there for 3 years. And from there, and the thing we used to do in the summertime, we'd work camps. And that was a big thing in coaching. You know, you always went out and worked camps. And I'd work, you know, I'd have it mapped out where I was working camp every week of the summer. That was my summer job.
Yeah.
And I'd go from place to place to place. You go all over the country and go from camp to camp. And I was fortunate going into my, between the summer, between my junior and senior year, Larry Brown was the head coach of the Nets, and my dad was the general manager. And Coach Brown asked me if I wanted to, you know, work at North Carolina's basketball camp, and I jumped at that opportunity. And I ended up working 10 straight summers at Carolina's camp. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was great because every session, and there were 3 weeks, right, at that time. So every session, Coach Smith would have a coach's clinic.
Okay.
So I went to every coach's clinic he had, and it was basically a Q&A with him for 2 hours. And he would do it with all the camp coaches. So I went to actually 30 Dean Smith's coaching clinics over the course of the 10-year period because I'd go every week. And so, you know, 3 times each summer. And you know, it was just a great way for me to be around the game and meet people. I mean, the people that I worked Carolina's basketball camp with, guys like Skip Prosser worked at camp, Mike Bray, R.C. Buford, the GM of the Spurs, worked camp with me at Carolina. Wow. So you got to meet a lot of people, know a lot of people, and you know, I met John Custer there, and John actually hired me. I was at Mercer's for 3 years, and then John hired me at George Washington University as an assistant after getting to know him at Carolina's camp, and that's how I got into Division I ranks.
Okay, so did that opportunity at George Washington, did that lead to, I think I saw where you also coached at Notre Dame?
Yes, I was with John for 5 years at GW from 85 to 90. And then from there, I went to Niagara University, and I was an assistant and actually associate head coach at Niagara for 7 years. And I actually, during that time, I used that time to get my master's degree from Niagara, which has been great because I got my master's in education. And it really helped me as a coach to understand how kids learn and the different learning styles. And I've applied that to coaching, and it's helped me a great deal. So I'm forever grateful for that. Mm-hmm. Then after my 7 years at Niagara, I became a head coach at the United States Merchant Marine Academy, which is one of the 5 federal academies. You know, there's Army, Navy, and Air Force are the 3 Division I federal academies. And then the Merchant Marine Academy and Coast Guard are both Division III, but are one of the 5 federal academies.
Okay.
So I was there for 2 years, and in my 2 years as a head coach at Kings Point, we won our league first time in school history and went to the NCAA tournament both years. So that was a lot of fun. And then after that is when I went to Notre Dame. And I was on Matt Doherty's staff, and I had met Matt while working at Carolina's camp. And when Matt got the job at Notre Dame, I was actually his second hire. And I was on his staff at Notre Dame for a year, and then we came to Carolina, and I was in Carolina with Matt for 3 years. And then after that, went to Marshall and was the senior assistant coach at Marshall for 4 years. And that ended my run in college, and that was 25 years I had spent as a college coach. Yes.
25.
I was 25 years in college.
So, okay, 2008, the NBA D-League comes calling. How did it was the D-League at the time.
Right.
How did that opportunity fall in your lap?
Well, again, a little Carolina connection. The year before, Joe Wolf was the head coach of the Colorado 14ers. And Joe and I, again, had known each other from working Carolina's basketball camp. And Joe had offered me an assistant's position on his staff in Colorado. It kind of came up late, and I was involved with some other things in this area. And my family at the time, we were living in Chapel Hill as we do now. Mm-hmm. And I decided that I couldn't take that job then. So the year goes by. I was doing some things here. I was actually doing some scouting for the Lakers out of here as well. And at the end of the year, Joe moved on. He got a job as an assistant in the NBA. Well, the Colorado 14ers, the owner had remembered me from interviewing me as an assistant's job. So they called me up and asked me if I'd be interested in the head coaching position. I went out and interviewed, got the job, and came in, and we won the D-League championship that year.
Okay, and it's pretty much been history since then. You've been involved with the NBA, it's G League now, since 2008. My question for you is how as a coach, because players have to do this all the time, they have to reinvent themselves to get better and to, pretty much stay with the game. How have you been able to reinvent yourself as a coach to stay in the G League for this long?
Well, every level's different. And the saying goes, the G League, the D League, G League, whatever you want to call it now. The G League is a whole different animal, and it is. College is different than the G League, and G League is different than the NBA. And so when I first got my job at Colorado, I kind of took a look at it and said, okay, how do I motivate the players? Because I've always thought that's one of the main goals. And my dad taught me that is one of the things you do as a head coach is you have to motivate the people who are with you every day. Mm-hmm. The players, your assistants, the staff, your training staff. I mean, everybody in the organization, it's the head coach's responsibility to have those people motivated and ready to go. So my first thought going to Colorado was, what are the motivations for the players? Where are they coming from with this? Because obviously the players weren't, especially at that time, weren't in the D League because they were making money. Mm-hmm. There were 3 levels of salary in the D League at that time. Okay, they either made $12,500 on a C contract, the $18,000 on a B contract, or $23,000 on an A contract. And there are only 2 A contracts allowed per team. So the majority of your players want a C contract, which is $12,500, plus room and rooming and all that stuff. So, and that's over 6 months. So it's obviously money's not their motivation. Right. Their motivation is to be seen, and their motivation in the D League and the G League is to get to their next contract and get to their next level. Well, how do they do that? And that was my thought was, how do I get these guys to the next level? What is the motivation for them to come in every day and play 50 games, through the course of a year and keep ready so that people can look at them and see them in the right light? And what I did was I said, okay, the first thing is they need numbers and they need individual numbers. And, you can try and say, oh, it's a team game and all that stuff, and it is. But I wanted to take that concern away. So what I did was I decided we were going to play faster than anybody else, because I figured if we had enough possessions, and got up enough possessions in the course of a game that we would get everybody their individual numbers, then that wouldn't be a concern for them. Mm-hmm. Then they could be motivated towards winning. And I showed them a stat that showed them that NBA call-ups at that time happened 72% of the time from teams with winning records. So winning was important. Becoming a winning team, part of a winning team was important. But I also knew they had to get them individual numbers. So we ran a system, we won the league. We won 34 games. We were 34-16. We're best record in the league, swept through the playoffs, didn't lose a game in the playoffs. And what we did is we were the only team who pressed and trapped the whole game. And we went out and at the time, see, it wasn't like it is now. Now there's 28 teams in the G League and everyone's one-to-one affiliated with a parent club and all that stuff. Back then there were only 16 teams. So I actually had 3 affiliates. My affiliates were Denver, Toronto, and New Jersey. So I couldn't play any one of their systems. I could play my own system at that time. So our system was we were pressing and trapping, and we were trying to get the thing up. And I believe we averaged 128 points a game. And we got that, and it's the highest scoring average the league had ever seen up to that point.
Okay, wow.
And we set the records for most points in a game, and I think our possessions were about 116 per game. Mm-hmm. And that's what we wanted. And our players loved it. And we got the ball up and down, and it was really a lot of fun. It was just an enjoyable way to play, and our players enjoyed playing that way. And they knew that, like a guy knew if he came down 3 times in a row and didn't get a shot, that it was coming soon because we had enough possessions. You didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So no one had to force things. Mm-hmm. And it really became a fun way to play.
Okay. So, but people who don't know, the NBA G League, D League is a minor league system. through the NBA.
Right.
Okay.
We're like the AAA.
Right.
I mean, most people know baseball, right?
Right.
So we're like the AAA for the NBA. And right now, there are 28 teams for the 30 NBA teams. The only two teams that do not have a G League affiliate right now are Portland and Denver. And I believe within the next 3 years, that will happen, and it will be 30 for 30, and it will be the true AAA of the NBA.
What are the pros? All right, Coach. What are the pros? What are the pros and what are the cons of the NBA G League?
Well, again, the pros are, the first thing is the opportunity to be seen. And, you go overseas and play, you'll probably make more money, although the salary structure is much better now in the league. And there's several different ways guys get paid. We can go into that later if you want. But when you're overseas, you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. When you're here playing in front of these teams and playing within systems that are with parent clubs. The last 3 years I was the head coach of the Texas Legends, and we used the Dallas Mavericks system. We used Rick Carlisle's system. So people saw our players playing within a system, an NBA system. So scouts could readily adapt that and say, hey, this guy will fit with us here. And this guy will fit with us here, and be able to match players much more readily than they can do when guys go overseas. So the opportunity to be seen playing with an NBA system, I think, is the biggest thing that the G League offers players.
Okay.
And I think that is the thing that the players come to our league for. And, not everybody that comes to the G League is going to make it to the next level, okay, or make it to the NBA. So we tell our guys, hey, you're not only playing for the NBA looks, you're playing for a better overseas deal than what you had coming in here.
Exactly.
And that becomes big. And last year with the Texas Legends, we actually set a record for the most buyouts in G League history. We had 4 guys that got bought out of their contracts to go over and play overseas, which is a big thing. To buy out of a contract, it costs a team $50,000. Yeah. So, you got a team from Europe paying $50,000 to get that guy. That means he had a pretty good look playing for us. Okay. So we actually, and the funny thing is, the teams don't get that 50, the league gets it. So I felt like last year with the Texas Legends, I made the G League $200,000.
You hear that, G League? Pay this man.
So it'd be nice to get a little bonus out of that. You know what I mean?
Now, Coach, if you were commissioner, what is one thing that you would change about the NBA G League?
I think, with the schedule, it makes it hard sometimes when you play these back-to-backs because our travel's not like the NBA. Our travel's commercial. And when you're playing like a Friday night game in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then you're playing a Saturday afternoon game in Des Moines, Iowa, it's tough to get to those games. And I think if they could do a little better job, and I understand the crux of the problem is with arena availabilities and things like that. And, in our markets, a lot of the G League teams aren't the number one tenant in the building, so they have to work around that. But they could do something to really do away with as many back-to-backs as possible because of the travel being commercial. I think that would be a big help.
Now, when these guys are drafted, or when you bring these guys to training camp, when you select your final roster, and I think you touched on it a few minutes ago, these guys want to play in the NBA. Okay, so as a coach, what is your vision? What do you tell these players? How do you get them to buy into what you're doing, knowing that I'm here to make it to the NBA?
Well, I think the first thing you have to be very honest and open with them, and that's one thing that I take a lot of pride in. I'm very frank and honest with each guy, and I'm big on communication with them. In some way or form, I always try to meet with a player at least once a week, and he may not even know it. It may not be a formal thing. It may just be like in the airport. Walking by a guy and sitting down with him for 5 or 10 minutes and really defining roles. and letting guys know where they stand at that moment on our team and future, what it looks for them moving forward. And, I'm not there to squash anyone's dreams.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, I'm trying to be very realistic with them on the feedback I'm getting from NBA scouts.
Okay.
And we did a thing, I was told, actually, which I find hard to believe. I was told by several assistant NBA GMs and scouts, we would send out highlight tapes and stats and stuff on our players to every NBA team at least every other week, trying to get them looks and trying to get them moved up, because I felt that was our job, was to get our players looks and get them moved up to their next thing. And even teams that were interested overseas, we would send out stuff all the time. And we would make video clips of guys doing their, what they did best, and say, hey, if you're looking for a rebounder, Jamil Warney, great rebounder. Here's what he does. Great hand. Great pass from the post. And I'd list his attributes. Then we'd list his stats. Then we'd send a clip tape. And we'd send it to every NBA team and as many overleague opportunities as their agents would make us aware of. And, I think the players knew that. And I know the players know that. And I think they appreciated that. And I think they appreciated an honest approach. If a guy, if he's not a guy that's being looked at by the NBA, I would tell him, I say, hey, right now they're not looking at you. Now, if you want to get looked at, maybe these are the improvements you have to make. And we were big in our program on working on skill development. And we always had, and for me, a big part of skill development and a big thing that I'm proud of is shooting and working on shooting. And I'm proud to say every single player who played at least 10 games for me in the G League improved his field goal percentage. Okay. And that's through the course of 8 years. That's over 150 players. So, in saying that, it doesn't come easy. We work at it. And we would do a thing where half an hour before every practice, the players knew that our coaches were on the floor. And that was their time to come in if they want to get shots at whatever skill they wanted to work on. Then depending on how long practice was that day, the first third of every practice was always based on individual skill development. Then after practice, our coaches knew we did not leave the floor, we did not leave the court until the last player left the court. And that was every day. Then when we were home, and if we didn't have a game that day, obviously, but if it was just a practice day, we always had a time where we could come back for what we called voluntary shooting. And we had a shooting workout where I could get guys between 250 and 300 shots up in 25 minutes. And through the course of me doing that, I never had less than 7 out of our 10 available G League players show up for that voluntary shooting workout. And that's why guys got better shooting the basketball.
Yeah. I always, I have a question about this, or let me ask you this. How do you feel about, you have your roster spots, okay? And you have to leave 2 open roster spots for guys in the NBA being potentially being sent down, correct?
Well, here's what it is. You get 10 G League players. Then there's 2 two-way players. And you actually have 12 there. Then the NBA can send down anywhere from 2 to 3 more players if they want. Okay, so you could have that many players. And I would tell our players first day that if, like when I was with the Mavericks, okay, and coaching the Legends, I would say, if the Mavericks send us a player, that guy is going to play. And he's going to play 30 plus minutes. So understand that going in so your feelings don't get hurt when that guy shows up. Because that's the way the system is. It's the same everywhere else. They may not tell you that, but it's pretty much the same everywhere in this league. Because when the parent club sends you a player, that is your responsibility, is to get them minutes. That's why they're sending them down.
Yes. How do you feel about that? Whether it's fair or unfair, how does that affect your rotation? Or if you have a guy he's been playing really well, but then the NBA decides to send,
Well, again, you tell them that from the beginning.
Okay, so they have that understanding.
And there's an understanding. And guys get mad, but they don't get mad at you. They get mad at the situation.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the system that we work under, you know, and you know, they say, you know, life isn't fair.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not. So deal with that. So if you don't want to deal with that, okay, get good enough that you're one of those NBA guys that they're sending down.
Exactly. Any misconceptions about the NBA G League that you've heard out floating around?
I don't know about misconceptions. You know, I think the league has come miles since I first got in it. Like I said, when I got in it, there were 16 teams. Okay? And I think everything has improved along the course of my 8 years being a head coach in the league. Travel has gotten better. Game ops at places have gotten better. You know, the per diem for players on the road has gotten better. It's not NBA level, but it's gotten better. You know, the league went out a couple years ago. Like, we used to fly into a market, and you never knew who was picking you up or what they were picking you up in. Sometimes there'd be like 6 cabs sitting outside, and you have to load into like 6 different cabs and all your equipment, and it was a mess. Well, the league went out a couple years ago and bought these mini buses for each market. So now you get picked up in one of those, and that's standard throughout the league. So things have become more uniform. The hotels. There's a standard by which the league rates the hotels, and they have to be at a certain level. And here's the way it works in the G League. The hotels are paid and set up by the home team in each market.
Okay.
So what the home team does is they go out and get good deals, right? And that helps defray the cost of the hotel. So as a visiting team, I don't have to go into each market and set up my own hotel. The home team does that. Okay, but there is a standard by which that hotel is to meet the league standard. The league goes in and checks the hotel out and says, yay or nay, you can put the visiting team in this hotel, and that's by what they do. You know, the officiating has gotten better. You know, the only job in the NBA that you have to go through the G League for is to become an NBA official.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
Okay, so in order to become an NBA official now, you have to go through the G League. And because of that, there's a great emphasis now, and they're doing a great job of not only training, but picking the people that come in now. Because as you see now in the NBA, a lot of these older officials have retired and are at the age where they're retiring. A lot of the ones that I grew up with watching right on the court and stuff, and even past that have retired now. The Joey Crawfords and the great officials of the past, right, are retiring. Well, their replacements are coming from the G League. They're not coming from college. That's
Which makes sense.
It's all trained and gone through the G League now, and it's so what you're getting now is a much more uniformed officiating crew from start to finish. And we're kind of still in the beginning phases of it, but I think as you'll see this thing move forward, it's just getting better and better.
Right, correct. I want to go real quick, Coach. I want to go back to your father. Rest in peace.
Thank
you. To your dad. But he was obviously he was a great coach. He was a great mentor, and he impacted your career, which is still going. Some of the knowledge that he passed on to you, do you share some of that knowledge with some of your fellow coaches and your players?
Oh, yeah, daily. You know, a lot of the things. It's funny. Fundamentals never go out of existence. You know, I work guys out all the time. In fact, I just came from a workout this morning in Raleigh with guys, and we do 2-ball drills. You know, I tell the guys, oh, these are the Steph Curry drills. Well, these are drills my dad was doing with me and with kids on the blacktop in the parks in Buffalo when in the summertime we would go and he would run camps and clinics. I remember out on this park at Erie Community College, and it was out on outdoor courts, and we'd be doing 2-ball drills out there. You know, and to this day I do those. You know, the fundamentals of the game, you know, proper pivot foot and footwork. You know, he was working on that back in the 60s. You know, that's still the case today. And those are still things that are prevalent today. You know, defending people the right way. You know, being in help side, strong side, all that kind of stuff. That's all stuff I learned from him. Then the other stuff, kind of the off the court stuff. You know, he told me a lot of things, you know, but some of the things that he's told me that I've passed on to our teams are, number one, as a coach, I don't treat everybody the same because the players aren't all the same. They come in every day. They're different people. They come in with different problems, different pluses, different minuses. So it's not fair for me to treat everyone the same. And everyone has a different role. So I treat them within their role. So my dad taught me a long time ago, you don't treat everybody the same, but you treat everybody respectfully and fairly. And so I've always tried to hold myself to that standard as a coach. And then he always taught me that, we talked about motivation before, that when I come into work every day, I've got to be the one with the most energy in the building. I've got to be the one walking onto the practice floor. And I've told our players, you have to match me. Okay? I'm not waiting for you. So I'm trying to bring the energy every day. That's my responsibility to the players. And I take that seriously. And then he taught me, I have these players' lives in my hand for the time I have them. Okay? That's responsibility that you have to take very seriously. And no matter what level you're coaching, all right, whether you're coaching young kids, okay, middle school kids, high school, college, pro, whether you're coaching men or women, okay, when they're with you, their lives in your hands. So you teach them things that go beyond the court and beyond basketball. Okay, you're teaching them life skills as well. And I've tried to keep that in mind as I've gone through my coaching career. And,
okay.
I was on this panel 2 summers ago at Pro Scout School in Las Vegas. And
that's your shirt.
I have the shirt on right there, yeah. But I was on with this guy, Adam Felipe. And Adam is the director of international scouting for the Sacramento Kings now. And Adam and I used to work camps together. And he said something about me on the panel. He said, I want to tell you something about Bob. He said, no matter who he's coaching, whether it's a kid, a 10-year-old kid in camp, or whether it's an NBA player, he brings everything. And he puts all his energy into that particular moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm proud that someone else would say that about me.
Right. That's good stuff, Coach. Now, you do a lot of clinics overseas. Talk about that a little bit and how did those things come into play?
Well, I've been fortunate to meet people and know people that want me to come over.
Everybody, man.
I coached 1 year in China in the CBA.
Okay.
In Tianjin, which is about an hour and a half southwest of Beijing. But since then, I've been fortunate that the NBA China group has brought me over, and I've probably done somewhere between 16 and 20 coaches clinics in China. And actually, this past summer, I went over twice, and the first time I went over, I did a training camp for the Chinese 19 and under men's national team. And then the second time I went over, I did a 2-week training camp for the women's 16 and under national team in China. And those are great experiences and love doing that. I'm very involved with a group in Mexico called the Telmex Foundation. That's headed by Carlos Slim. And they have me come down and run coach clinics. I've probably, over the past 8 years, I've probably done about 150 coaches clinics in Mexico, all over the country. And I just love my experiences. And I've gone to Africa. Guy Stefan Lassame, who played for me in the G League and become a good friend. He's from Gabon. And he was the first player in Gabon who ever played in the NBA. He brought me over, and I ran a 2-week camp over there. And it's funny.
Nice.
We did that a few years ago. So this summer, I'm at Portsmouth, or this spring. And I'm getting ready. And as I'm walking to the hotel, getting ready to go over the games, this kid comes up to me. 6'9" kid. He played at South Carolina, Chris Silva.
Yeah.
And he comes up to me, he goes, Coach, did you remember me? And I was like, yeah, yes, but you gotta remind me. He said, when I was 14 years old, he said, I'm from Gabon. When I was 14 years old, you ran a camp in Gabon that I was at. He said, and that motivated me to work to get to the States to play college basketball. And now he's playing with the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I know that name.
And that kid was in my camp in Gabon at 14 years old. And those are the things, like, you can't put a price on. That's the kind of stuff. I saw him, it gave me chills. I got goosebumps.
I want you to touch on this thing about load management and this whole AAU thing where, people now are talking about, kids are playing too many games in high school through the AAU circuit. What do you say to that?
I have sons. I have 4 sons, and my oldest son now is 26, and he's actually in the Army. He graduated from Dayton Army ROTC. My second son graduated from Catholic University. He played there for 4 years, and he's actually getting into officiating.
Okay.
My third son is a senior in high school at Chapel High School. My fourth son is a freshman in high school at Chapel High School. They've all played through it, and all played. And there's good and bad to everything. If you're in the right programs, the right AAU programs, and I'll give a shout out to my son's played for a couple of different AAU programs here in the state of North Carolina, but the Durham Hurricanes and Flight 22, Durham Hurricanes run by Rob Sinclair and Flight 22 by Nathan Falk, their programs are run fabulously. And the kids don't play. They play enough, and they do the right things, and they work at their games, and they try and get skill development in. And so if you're with the right program, then it's a good thing. And it's just like anything else. It's like if you're in a bad high school program, it's a bad thing. If you're in a good high school program, it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. If you're in a bad college program, it's a bad thing. If you're in a good pro program, it's a good thing. Right. So there's good and bad with everything. I don't think you can cast one net over the whole thing and say this is bad. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And then there's good and bad people involved with everything. And
oh, you can say that again.
Right? I mean, so you just got to find those people and find the people that you want to be associated with. Uh-huh. And I think I've been fortunate that we have done that now with my sons and feel like they've been around quality people. And I think when people look at AAU right now, they should look and say, okay, let me find the people I want to be associated with and I want my sons associated with. If you don't feel comfortable leaving your son with that person, then he shouldn't be in that program.
Wrong program.
Right.
Yeah, wrong. Last few points, Coach. Who is Bob Mackinnon?
I'm just a guy from Buffalo. I grew up in the game of basketball. I love the game. I love coaching people. Again, any age, either gender, male, female. I mean, I love being around the game. I love being in the gym. My favorite time when I'm coaching a team is practice. I absolutely love practice. I love getting guys reps, and I love seeing guys get better. And I love, being a G League coach. My favorite time was whenever I got that call from an NBA team saying, we're calling this guy up on your team. Mm-hmm. And you see that happen to guys. And, I've had some special, I mean, every single one of them, the different reactions. I've had 28 guys get called up to the NBA, 28 call-ups, and every single time it's been a special reaction. And when those kind of things happen, that fulfills you as a person. And that's where I get my fulfillment is. And like I said today, I had 4 guys from Raleigh who played for the Raleigh Firebirds in the gym this morning working out. They're getting ready for their season. It's a semi-pro team here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And those guys went hard. And they felt, I think, walking out of the gym, they got a little bit better today. So I walked to the gym, out of that gym feeling pretty good about it, mm-hmm. And we'll be back again tomorrow morning doing the same thing.
That's good stuff. Last thing, Coach. This segment here is called Free Game. And this segment here, just what I want you to do is any inspiration, anything that you want to give. It could be players. You could talk about anything. It could be dealing with life or any type of inspiration, advice you want to give. It's called Free Game.
Well, one of the major things that we would tell our players and tell our teams, I actually had a talk with my youngest son about this last night, is control what you control. And for every situation, okay, you have a reaction. and how you deal with that situation, what your reaction is, how you control your emotions, how you control your body language, how you control how you react to that situation is really going to determine your outcome. Not so much the situation determines it, but your reaction to it. So we're big on, in my programs, control what you control and let the other stuff go. And I think if you can do that, it makes life a lot easier. And when life is easier, it usually ends up pretty good.
Right, exactly. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Coach. I can go on and on with questions. I actually have quite a few more questions I want to ask you, but we'll save them for another time.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah. Again, thank you. Look forward to seeing you down the line. Sports Talk with Player Agent 3.